Hey, folks, greetings from the Offensive Security Group here at Security 360, coming at you with a new episode of the Cyber Threat Perspective. You've got Mr. Darrius and myself here with you today. And today we're talking about BurpSuite. Every January, PortSwigger releases its, kind of annual game plan with regards to, what they're going to add into the product, right? And for those of us that live in the web app sec world, it's kind of exciting. Imagine being a mechanic, and every year Mac Tools comes out with their newest tools, right? And so it's very interesting to us, and it's very relevant to our work, and so it's exciting for us. So hopefully it's exciting for you too. If it is, like, subscribe, all that good stuff, depending on how you're consuming it. So yeah, man. So you want to give us kind of like, there's three, I guess, broad topics that we're going to talk about, like different kinds of burp, right?
Yeah. So we all know BurpSuite, PortSwigger, they generally go hand in hand with web app pen testing. But PortSwigger, there's actually kind of a few different products that they kind of offer. So first, is BurpSuite Community and Professional, and that tends to be what people think about when they hear BurpSuite. On top of that, though, they have BurpSuite Enterprise. And so that's kind of one of their solutions to basically essentially automate scanning. It's basically DAS scans essentially. And then additionally, on top of that, which is really cool, recently they released Dastardly, which basically integrates in your CI/CD pipeline. So you push it out, and then it automatically performs a scan, which I think is pretty cool.
Agreed.
And then all of their products ultimately fall on, and I think this is really their bread and butter, the burp scanner. And so this is where it's actually, performing the scans, and, basically says, hey, I found this thing, and here is the finding, and here's the proof. Um, and so they've recently announced a couple of updates to their burp scanner, as well as BurpSuite Professional, and then Enterprise as well. And a lot of those I'm actually really excited for, particularly the features that are going to be added to the burp scanner.
Agreed. Yeah, definitely. And so we'll kind of cover those, I guess, in order from the burp scanner, which, as you mentioned, is kind of the core of basically everything that PortSwigger does. We'll talk about that, and then we'll go into the individual products and talk about what's exciting about that. I will tell you, several of these are substantial improvements in the scanner. And so do you want to get started and kind of tell us, like, what's your favorite improvement of the scanner? And then I'll jump into, it's probably
Yeah,
the
for
same
sure.
stuff I'm looking excited about, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah. So I think for me, the biggest improvement that I see as far as the burp scanner goes is they've added improvement for a lot of JavaScript frameworks. And really, that just means we're going to be able to handle single page applications and dynamic pages. We're gonna, it's going to be basically more efficient, and we're going to be able to find more. I think that's huge. Normally, when a lot of new web app pen testers start out, you're used to dealing with multi-page applications and forms, and BurpSuite was always really, really great at that. But then you get to the point where it's just a single page application. Everything is just handled dynamically via some form of JavaScript framework. And just, you're getting JSON back, and you're dynamically putting everything where it needs to go. Burp would kind of fail to find stuff, and you had to manually go in and play around with things and find vulnerabilities. Well, based on what they're talking about, what they did is they've added improved scanning for JavaScript frameworks.
mhm,
And particularly what I find interesting is it seems like they focused a lot on the React library,
agreed.
which makes sense to me. React is, if I'm not mistaken, it's still the number one JavaScript framework that's being used out there. So I mean, the fact that they've added detections with that in mind is awesome. And they've also are talking about the fact that, we're not just focused on React, because there are many JavaScript frameworks out there. They're also including, they're adding additional detections for Angular, Vue.js, and just all the other popular JavaScript frameworks as well. So that's one that I'm extremely excited for. If they can get to the point where, someone has a spa, and I can just let burp go, and it can, it can at least, give me a starting point to be able to say, hey,
Yeah.
let me go dig in on this a little bit more. that's going to be huge, and it's really going to save a lot of web app pen testers a significant amount of time.
Yeah, and that's really what Burp's all about for us, right? Is it is to us in the web app sec world, it is kind of the Nessus scanner, right? Or the OpenVAS vulnerability discovery tool. It's a little more significant in that way because we live inside the tool for the duration of the web app pen test for the most part. But it's like you said, right? It gives us pointers as to where we can prioritize our effort because on these very large web applications, you can imagine pen testing versus Google's landing page, right? Single form field versus, an Amazon store, which is going to have tens of thousands of pages and fields. And so this tool gives us efficiencies we may not otherwise have. Right. And to your point, there are certain apps that we will get in the queue that need to be pen tested. And we look at it and we go, oh man, this is going to choke Burp so hard. And so, we just know, right? Because we've done so many of these that we realize this is going to be 100% manual. We can't rely on Burp to find any of this stuff. And a big portion of that, like you said, were the single page applications, right? The SPAs, the ones that were JavaScript heavy would usually choke Burp. And I think that's why they added the integrated browser component to it. And it sounds like they're going to improve that as well. Or they already have. I guess it's out already in December as an improvement. So one of mine, by the way, that I'm a big fan of, when we do APIs, okay, and a lot of people don't know this, we treat an API like a web app. The problem is it does require specific knowledge about the functionality of the API for us to be able to perform testing. And we usually get that in the form of like a Swagger file or, a Postman definition. The ability for BurpSuite now to ingest API definitions directly opens up a tremendous amount of flexibility for us because now maybe we don't have to daisy chain multiple applications in a workflow to get it working the way that we had to do it previously. So I like that. I'm excited.
Yeah. I'd say that's kind of another thing I'm really excited for too. Yeah, because for those who don't know, kind of our workflow for handling things is we would have a Postman collection, and Postman is just a way. It's basically a GUI for interacting with APIs. So we work with clients. Eventually, we would get a Postman collection that should outline the API, and then we would have to basically proxy from Postman to BurpSuite.
Yeah. Yep.
And so it works, but it's just now there's a less, now they've added this feature. We don't have to basically run through the entire collection in Postman just to get everything in Burp, so that now we can actually perform testing and fuzzing.
Exactly.
We can now just do everything just in one application. So I think that's going to be a huge win. And really, really just tremendous, great job on PortSwiggers for adding that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. On top of that, since we're talking about, APIs, it looks like they've also added support for GraphQL, which I think is great to get ahead of that, because I do think more and more developers are starting to use GraphQL over a traditional REST API. So it's great that they're adding that as well. I know there's actually been a couple of like presentations and talks on, how to exploit GraphQL if it's not, set up and configured correctly. So I do think, we as web app pen testers, we can expect to see more of it in the future.
Agreed.
So might as well hop on board. It's great they've hopped on board already, and we can, start finding and exploiting these things.
Yeah, and I think Burp's doing the thing that a lot of extensible platforms do, like frameworks, where they're slowly ingesting add-ons, right? So for the longest time, there were some really good BurpSuite extensions in the BurpSuite store where you could install GraphQL attack tools and enumeration and discovery tools and things like that. And so as a matter of fact, we should probably have a podcast on, we could do just BurpSuite extensions.
You're right.
And so like, there's some really cool ones, like in the background right now, I'm running some scans and, it's discovering things like AWS secrets that are embedded in JS libraries and stuff like that. But those are add-ons. And so it's cool to me to see PortSwigger recognize the work that the community has put in to get these created and then just ingest them into the bulk of the the other products, right? So now it's not an extension anymore; it's part of the core functionality. They did the same thing with the what was it, retire.js. That
Mm.
used to be an extension. Now it's an inherent part of the BurpSuite scanner. So kudos to them on, paying attention to what the community wants and needs, in making that part of the core product. So that's really cool.
So that covers the scanner. I think
Mhm.
next, there's BurpSuite Enterprise. So that one, it's fairly, I want to say it's what, fairly newish. It might be a year or two
It's maybe a year or
old.
two. Yeah.
Yeah, give or take.
Oh, one or sorry, not oh one. Good grief. 2021 is when it actually
Okay,
came out. It became
makes sense.
popular. Yeah.
So I mean, it's nice. At the end of the day, it's a scanning engine, and it's used to essentially automate. Hey, you can basically give it a web app, it'll scan it, and it'll basically say, hey, here's everything I found. And so I will say it's pretty good. But at least some of the things that I'm excited for in terms of what they added is one, they've added the ability to export your results via XML. And one of the things that I specifically want to point out, um, is in their kind of blog post talking about their updates, they mention Defect Dojo specifically in mind. They're like,
Isn't
"Hey,
that cool?
yeah, like we've added this feature so that we can integrate with Defect Dojo, which is crazy." And it just really, props and kudos to Matt and his team. So for our viewers who've been with us for a while, you may remember our podcast with Matt. And so it's just really cool to see one of our partners and friends and people we work closely with get that name recognition out there. So I
Yeah.
think that's really cool.
Yeah, and it further illustrates how small the web app pen testing community is. If you've been in the community for any period of time, man, you just start to get to know people, and it's cool because you get to see, my buddy over here, his project gets integrated with my other buddy's project, and before you know it, everything works really well together. So it's just super cool. It makes me really happy for the future of our of this particular sport that we play.
For sure.
So
Let's see. I think additionally, just the only thing I can kind of think of that I think I really like and would really be helpful to those who use Burp Enterprise. They're still working on it, but being able to integrate it in a contain, basically being able to deploy it in a container so that you can integrate it with
mhm,
your CI/CD pipeline.
yeah,
Um, so I think once they're able to do that, that's going to be huge. However, they also have another product that kind of does something similar, and it's free and it's dastardly.
yeah,
So I had the ability to kind of sit in. They had a webinar recently, and they kind of showed it off. And I do think we're talking about the emergence and the rise of DevSecOps. Somewhere in your pipeline, you need something, whether it's Burp Enterprise or Dastardly, or there are tons out there. Those are just kind of my personal favorite. I'm a Port Swigger guy, but
same.
you want something like that in your pipeline just to make sure that just common bugs and vulnerabilities aren't being made to production.
Yeah.
It's at this point, um, you know, it's a no-brainer. Um, and so I think that's once they really get that taken care of, I think that's going to be huge. And I kind of hope and expect to see a rise in Burp Enterprise, people using that in their DevSecOps as a part of their DevSecOps solution.
Yeah, and for those of you again, who follow along, we offer DevSecOps as a solution, right? Where we integrate with the security team or the development team rather. We partner with Veracode, we partner with some other folks. We work with Defect Dojo, and so we did kind of a we'll call it a study about the cost of bugs, and looking at how much it costs an enterprise solution to publish a bug to production and then discover it via penetration testing. And it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 times, right? So if we can find the bug during the CI/CD pipeline early enough, it'll cost you a couple $100, right? The cost of attending a meeting and saying, hey, that's not a secure way to solve that problem, versus the $20,000 it costs you to do a penetration test. And I think we estimated that a critical bug costs $10,000 to find and fix if you discover it during a penetration test, as opposed to $200 if you find it during the functional requirements meeting and the functional meeting. So I say all of that to say this, that you're absolutely right, man. Not only is it a no-brainer, but at some point it's a little silly not to do this because there are so many great tools out there. And now you can't even use the excuse that you don't have the talent in-house to do it because there are folks like us who will set it up and run it for you. And it's still cheaper than pen testing every single release of your application if you're a dev shop. So
Yeah, which it's great. It's great. I personally I love finding vulnerabilities during a pen test, but you're exactly
me,
right. If we can catch it earlier, it's gonna,
yeah,
it's your companies are much better off.
yeah, it's not lost on me that I'm talking myself out of a job, right? However, in the best interest of the people writing the code and the organization who needs to be profitable and successful, pen testing is the least efficient way to find and fix issues. It's unfortunate because it's also the most fun way, at least for us.
Right. Yep. And then, kind of keeping in the same vein where, they're working on being able to deploy via a container. They've added the ability to deploy on Amazon,
Yep, I saw
AWS
that.
via an AMI. So once again, it's like going back to it's a no-brainer. They're making it so easy to deploy. You don't even have to worry about spinning
Yep,
up a server and configuring it.
yep.
So huge win, I think, for Burp Enterprise.
So, today, right now, you can pick up the phone and call Jira, Darrius, you can call Defect Dojo, and you can call BurpSuite and or PortSwigger, and within a few days have an entire workflow built in Amazon for, very moderate cost by comparison to other solutions. Man, it's a couple of mouse clicks away. Just go do it.
Yep. I think it's really interesting just from an infrastructure perspective how the industry has changed. I remember when I first started my career, it was very much like, oh, there's a new service that the company's integrating. Oh, that means we're gonna have to build a server,
Mhm.
and let's go build a server. And like now it's just like there's no go deploy this thing. It's
Yep.
already go deploy
Yep.
this thing, log in with the default creds, change it, configure it, you're done. Um, so man, it's
It's too easy
crazy
not to do.
how much change has occurred.
Agreed. Agreed. It's just too easy not to do, man.
Yep.
So, and I will say, I also like that they're, Burp Suite, when it first came out, was really meant to be an enterprise solution where you as an organization bought it, brought it internally and used it. They are diverging a little bit from that by integrating some consulting capability, which is good for us to be able to use that where, they allow you to, for example, track effort that's used within that, right? Within Burp Suite Enterprise. So it makes the tool more usable for us, which isn't a huge deal probably for the people listening, but it's tremendously valuable for us to be able to serve our clients better. So good stuff on that.
Agreed. And then next, I think this is truly where kind of the bulk, like as I was reading this, I was like, pretty much everything. I was like, oh yeah, this is awesome.
Mhm.
The updates to Burp Suite Professional, which is essentially what we use on every single engagement. This is where we live. It's our Swiss Army knife.
Mhm.
Super crucial to our workflow. Um, and I guess at the top, and they're really touting it, is the fact that there's now a new Burp Suite API. And that just opens up an insane amount of possibilities as far as what we can automate and how we can improve our workflow. Um, they're talking about adding more and more support specifically for web apps in terms of their API, and it seems like they're really committed to adding more and more features to it. But man, I'm personally excited for that. I can't wait to be able to improve some of the scripts I've had right
Yeah.
now. I'm doing this awkward thing where I'm using an extension called Carbonator to
Mhm.
basically, execute things via Java because Burp Suite is written in Java. It's very awkward process, but it
Yeah.
looks like if I'm reading this correctly, now I'm just going to be able to
Just
basically hit
script
an
it.
API. Yeah,
Script it with
script it out
anything in
running.
any language you want. Yeah.
Yeah, so like the ability to really just script it out, kick it off, at least handle, the boring steps of spidering and auditing a site. And then to even go a step further with it, like, hey, you got these results back, being able to write and integrate some of the custom stuff I've written to
Mhm.
validate burp findings, like that's going to be huge.
Yeah.
And really, I think not only will it impact our web app process, I think it even has the ability to improve our external pen test process too.
Yeah. Agreed.
Um, so
Yeah,
that
because
right
we
there,
we
super
leverage
excited
this on
for.
just about every type of engagement that we do. because it
Yeah,
is that, you know, there's just like, man, there's just web interfaces everywhere. And that's just the reality of it. And so, you know, even when we're talking about mobile penetration testing, there's still an API that that mobile app is interacting with. And so, you know, I can't think of very many engagements that in some degree we're not interacting with HTTP, you know, WebSockets, whatever it is. So yeah, we use it for everything. And having that ability to script and create automated test cases through the API just simplifies everything.
for sure.
So that's pretty awesome. I agree. Um, so they're also doing some pretty cool developments with the collaborator. So
Yep.
let's talk about what that is. And a lot of people may not understand what a collaborator is. There are a lot of web application vulnerabilities that require an external resource, okay, like a bad guy server, for example, or require something to receive a request that is reflected through a web application through a vulnerability. And so the collaborator serves that function for us. It allows us to quickly, easily spin up those remote resources and interact with them through the web application. For example, if I am, you know, making a request to the server and trying to get the web server to maybe resolve a DNS, right? A DNS name. Then if I'm using Burp Collaborator, it will actually tell me like, hey, there was a resolution request made. And therefore that server is reflecting DNS requests out through that user interface. And so that's really what it's for, right? It's one of the more advanced tools. And to see them adding it by default into intruder attacks,
Yep.
phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal, you know. And so just all of it, this reads like a pro ball list, man. I'm just really excited for a lot of this stuff.
For sure. I think if I'm reading correctly, it's gonna get it's gonna have its own tab now. So that's gonna
Yeah.
be pretty cool as opposed to kind
Mhm.
of being hidden in some of the
Yeah.
settings. And yeah, like yeah, it being integrated into Intruder, game changer. Um, for
Solid.
sure.
Agreed.
Let's see. Other than that, they're adding a new testing workflow. So I think that'll be cool as far as you know, we have our methodology for performing web app pen tests.
Yeah.
I think you know it's going to be awesome to be able to be like, hey, here's the methodology, here's the workflow, here are the action items, and you know, right now we currently handle it outside of the tool, outside of the project. You know, and we
Yeah.
just check stuff
It
off. But the fact,
it's
yeah,
it's a
like now,
little it's a little rudimentary the way that we do it
yeah,
because there's just not a great way to do it, right? And so,
yeah,
you know, we do it in text files and manually and all this stuff. And so being able to have that in the tool, I think is going to be huge for us, you know, especially if we can interact with it in real time, as in like, hey, I've completed the what is it, 264 checks in the web testing guide version 4. You know, so I've completed all those checks, boom, this endpoint's gone. I don't need to worry about it anymore. And so I would love, I haven't actually like dug into the testing workflow yet because I don't think I've done a web pen test since it came out. You may have had an opportunity, but I just really haven't looked at it, but it looks really cool.
yeah. Not yet, but I'm definitely going to use it on the next pen test
Next
coming
week,
up for
right?
sure. Yeah, yeah. So we'll show you see how it goes. But I mean, assuming it works, if it works the way I would like it to, um, I think it's really gonna, you know, one from a collaboration perspective, to be able to work out of a single burp project, and to have other people hop on and help out.
That's
Um,
amazing.
yeah, it's really I think it really help our team out. Um, and then lastly, overall, they just updated the overall user interface. I think their interface was already pretty good,
Yeah.
but it seems like they've added the ability for us to create customized workspaces. And so that right there, once again, I like to customize my interface. So now that we can do that, like if there are certain things like sequencer, for example, I use sequencer a little bit. Do I use it all, you know, all the time? Not really. So I'm okay with putting sequencer, you know, hidden in the settings at the top as opposed to
Yeah.
there just being a full tab
Agreed.
always present. So
And I would like the ability to be able to move, you know, like for example, I use Joseph for attacking JWT, you know, JSON web tokens. And so, but I don't use that in every engagement. And so I would love to be able to have like a folder of tabs where I, you know, kind of like how I would organize browser tabs into
mm,
groups. So I'm hoping to see that as a functionality coming out. But yeah, I would like to be able to move that into a separate workspace full of like very specific, like the GraphQL, you know, attacks, like all of those add-ons, you know, let's get all that stuff out of there, right? Because not every web app has that. So
Yep.
I'd like to see that coming. But honestly, man, I don't have any complaints about the tool. It, I remember its origins, going all the way back to Rogan Dawes. If you're still out there, buddy, I remember using WebScarab with you in the early 2000s, and that kind of spawned BurpSuite. And so, just seeing the evolution of this tool and where it is today, man, it is awesome. It's fantastic.
Yep. I can't keep but like, touting how great Portswigger is for this because they took a
Yeah.
tool that pretty much every web app pen tester already uses. It was already the gold standard. It would be extremely easy to just be like, yeah, we're the gold standard. It works. People are happy. We're good. We're
Yeah.
golden. Let's just sit back. But the fact that they're committed to continue, adding these improvements,
Yeah.
man, I just think that's huge from a company and industry perspective.
Agreed. And they practically give away the pro version. The pro version's a couple $100 per license. You know what I mean? Like even, if I were not a professional web app pen tester and that was not my job, I would personally own a copy of BurpSuite
Oh,
because
for
it's
sure.
just that useful for just IT tasks, for being able to be a proxy and troubleshoot problems and identify issues. I just can't say enough good things about it, especially if we're looking at it from a value perspective, right? It is that much. It's worth every penny and more, no question.
For sure. I say for those who are listeners who are just, who do bug bounties, buy
Oh,
if
man.
you're using the
Your first
community
bug bounty.
edition, yeah, it'll make up for it. The
Yeah,
moment you
you'll
find
pay for it.
something, yeah, just get the pro version.
Yeah, agreed, man. And I mean, it literally pays for itself. It
Yep.
literally pays for itself if you're doing bug bounty stuff. So, yeah, man. So, anything else you want to throw in there before we wrap up?
No, I think that's pretty much covers
Yeah,
everything.
good.
Yeah,
So listen, folks, if you like this, you like the content, like, subscribe. Most importantly, what helps us out is when you share it and get the word out about the work that we're doing. And give BurpSuite Pro a check, man. The Portswigger folks that are doing the good work out there, really making, these guys. If I had to make a bold statement, they are single handedly improving the security of web applications on planet Earth at a significant rate. Like, we are able to do so much with the tools that they provide for us, and I can't thank them enough for it. So, so that said, we will see you guys next week.